Hello there, and welcome to episode 2 of my tutorial series for Songs of SYX version 63. So today we're going to continue where we left off in the last episode. This hamlet here is expanding quite decently. We got the basics down, hunters providing food for as long as there is game around, and we are producing furniture to make the fishery happen. Today we're going to expand beyond that. We're going to explore trade to some degree, and we're going to set up the livestock industry. So beyond that, I cannot really foresee how far we'll get, but let's just get started. So every city you start out has some livestock in its starting stockpile. And the thing is, when you mouse over it, you see everything here has a spoil rate. Every item has a spoil rate. Stone doesn't really spoil, but it still does somehow. And as you see, livestock has a 50% spoil rate. Livestock is what you require to set up pastures of any kind. And therefore, it's really a waste, and it's hard to, or not hard, it's much harder to set it up later than to just start out with a pasture right from the get-go. So that's what we're going to do. We might have food to no end, but there is no such thing as too much food in this game, alright? Let's get to the pastures. You'll find them in the agriculture area, in the husbandry tab. So there's various creatures that you can breed here. Aurochs produce a considerable amount of leather. The Balti crawler, well, as you can see, they are mostly not really interesting for other species. Those green hammer icons depict how much people like them. Balti crawlers are more for the insectoid species. Entelodons are pure-on meat producers. Globdians produce mostly eggs and onxes. They are pretty low in food production, but they produce wool. So we're gonna roll with the Auroch because this brings us meat and leather. Personally, my favorite, if you have no, well, if you want to have a steady leather production, these guys are pretty good. And Telodons are really good if you want to have something which just provides raw food power. And notable here is as well that the pastures will also produce livestock, so they'll fill up over the time. Okay, so we're going to go over that, but as you see here, there is one thing that we don't know yet, where to build that thing ideally. So let's get back to the overlays and fertility bases, what we require. Here is the same sentiment as with every farm would I would set up. The more fertility, the better. So we got an area here which is quite fertile, and all the other fertile soil is above the river, across the river. So I figured that I'll reserve these areas for the actual agriculture, like crops and such, and we're going to use this rather mediocre field for pastures. So let's draw a nice huge grid over there, and I'm taking it as far as I can until I hit the red border. You see that red border down there? This is when the game tells you stop, you can't make it any larger anymore. So we're going to make something like that, and I'm going to expand over these areas here. I want to catch as many of the high fertility tiles as possible. So that's as large as it can be. It's also crossing the mass grave here, but whatever. We will set up a gate. As you see here, the gate has to be connected to the outer borders there, and that's that. This pasture can consume up to 24 workers, which is totally fine. We're going to construct that thing and turn off the overlays and start working. So let's make sure we're going to set up some road leading to this place. It's always worth it to have roads. I'll show you later in the series also why it's definitely worth it to have roads. In a nutshell, it's enough to know people love roads. Most species in this game feel happy about roads. Means that they'll be more eager to migrate to your city. By the way, migration, we got a lot of people. And yeah, the next thing that we're going to talk about today is housing. Yeah, I knew I had something on my plate that I totally forgot. So your people need some place to live at, you know? They can't just live on the streets. Therefore, housing is a necessity. You'll find it in the Civics tab. House. So when you're building houses, you get asked if you want to build apartments. That's the most luxury thing. Houses, that's, well, somewhere lower than apartment than the dormitories, which is pretty much high density living, and longhouses is super high density living. So, in a nutshell, the more privacy a apartment provides, the happier the people will be about it. Some species don't care about privacy. Or good friends here, for example, the Cretonians are much like that, and therefore you'd be quite okay with high density buildings. But we're going to build houses for starters, just to give you a feeling about this housing system. You are also able to select what kind of walling they should have, and here you have your regular house. That's a dormitory. That's a longhouse. You see 15 residents for the longhouse, 7 for the dormitory, and only 4 for the house, and only 2 for the apartment. So that gives you some ideas about how the density is. So we're going to go, well, let's go for some dormitories. I changed my mind. And we're going to set them up over here. I'll put them down. Well, while we're at it, why not? So in the overlay area, you have also a noise overlay. As you can see, the carpenter here is producing quite a lot of ruckus. Your people don't like to live at noisy places, and therefore, you know, try to keep your housing away from that. Makes it more attractive, makes the people more happy. So some of these little things that make your city really worthwhile spending your time in. And I need some more roads. Ever since they got moved away, I don't have trouble finding them. Alright, there we go. Let's connect that all the roads. And let's fast forward this a bit. I'm picking up more and more people there because, you know, I can't afford it. Why not? So, injured people, mauled, the saber-tooth is taking its toll. And here the pasture is being prepared, and people are swarming there, getting the job done. I really like the super high speed rating. There we go. And the houses in the meantime got finished there. And as you see here, the meter here where the housing is now at 0. This meter is depicting the homelessness in your city. And the pasture has been finished. I set these on auto-employ. Same reasoning as usual. It is just quite useful to let the AI decide. And it does decide quite well. Alright, so this place will now take some time until it's filled up, but after a while it'll be a steady producer of meat and leather. The thing here is quite important to note. The production of a hunter is pretty high early on, but as soon as he runs out of game, there is almost near to no output anymore from these. So, you know, they're a good starter. They are a really, really good thing to get yourself kickstarted upon, but you should not rely on them. Under no circumstances. That would be really, really bad for you. Okay, so let's pick up more people, and let's get 5 more carpenters going. Keep an eye out on your meters on the of wood and stone. These should never go on 0. And now we see another thing here. The meat stockpiles are full. So, of course, we can just upgrade the amount of crates that we use there. That's one thing that you can do. But I highly recommend you to think about one thing. Meat has a 100% spoilage rate. So that means whatever is not getting eaten there will go bad at the end of the year. Also, by the way, I accidentally built over a low quality coal deficit, but it won't matter that much. We're going to get our coal later from that point. No city that I ever built had more than 2 mines of every resource that I really took seriously, and that one was too small. But just wanted to mention that we are living on a coal patch. Anywho, where was I? We're going to go here and expand towards more food production, because that's always a thing. And the next bigger thing that we're going to build ourselves towards to will now be science. It's never a bad decision to crank up your food production as hard as you can. Alright, but I was at the meat production. So to get rid of the overproduction without wasting it, there is a way. Where is it? Yeah, I don't find anything in this menu anymore. So, whatever, we're going to go over here. So what I'm looking for is an export depot. So this is a place where you can sell goods, and we're going to set it up right next to the pasture. Here we go. Because we're going to export meat at that spot. Basically, every good that your city is producing in larger amounts is worth being exported, because exports, you see there, meat is being bought at 3 denaries each. So far we haven't talked too much about money, but it's quite okay. And when we select that, we are now ordered to select a export level. So the lower this bar, the less gets exported here. So here, export 10% of warehouse stock. So when we're above, when we're at 100%, the last 10% will get exported and 90% will be kept in our warehouses with this setting. And with this setup, you can easily decide how much of the food is supposed to be exported and turned into money. This is really, really powerful, because with money we can do a lot of things. Currently we don't have any money, we only have goods. As you see here, this would be where our money is at. And, well, maybe our hunter and or pasture will get us some income together over the course of the time, but not currently. So the fishery just takes a little bit longer. That's why I employed more more carpenters here. And, well, currently there's not that much we're ought to do. As you see here, food clock is slowly ticking down. That's mostly because our hunter is now receiving less and less income there, as you can see. The meat production between this year and last year is almost 50% lower. It ain't bad, but it's also not really, really terribly good. That's why we need that fishery ASAP. We got 27 people who are idling around. As soon as the fishery is ready, those are not going to idle anymore. In Songs of Six, it's really important to note one thing. The more food you have in your city, the happier your people will be. It's like in medieval times, food means safety. Basically, the more food your city has, the safer the people feel about it. So let's get towards spreading some more culture in here, huh? So we got a hearth the last time, and today we're going to go for an eatery. This is a place where your folks will get towards to and eat at. This is insofar really important as it is an upgrade for, well, quality of life. We're not going to make that insanely large. Let's just make that 12 on 12, because the eatery is a building we're not going to rely on too much. We're going to replace it in the future with a much more powerful canteen. So don't spam too many eateries. You will replace them in the long run, or you'll need to replace them in the long run. So you see here we have a new material that is requested, and that's clay. So we cannot really build the eatery without any clay available. So let's set up what we can. And here again, I'm trying to cram in as much as possible before leaving the screen. Maybe here, yeah. Okay, that's as much as we can do. Here, we need now clay. the clay is something that we cannot really just provide currently. So let's try and provide ourselves some money. So I'm going to use Control and left click to copy that export depot. Here we go. Since we cannot export meat anytime too soon, we're just not producing enough of it, we're going to export all of the leather for the time being. Leather is fairly valuable. You can make a lot of nice things with leather, but currently we just want that money. I'll let the setting like that. That's an export everything setting. That basically means whatever we get, we'll slam it out. And as you notice here, we're running out of housing yet again. So in that regard, just keep expanding your housing. There's one thing that is really worth mentioning though. The people will try to live in the vicinity of their job. So that means if you have not enough... What's happening here? Oh, we ran out of wood. So if your housing is too far away from the job that they're supposed to do, then people will not even accept that housing. So it's really important that you spread your houses all across the city. It's worth thinking about it like, people need a house in the vicinity of their job. So in a nutshell, my cities usually have like 4 or 5 several central spots for citizenship where I allocate those service buildings and whatnot. All right, and our first money is flowing in. As you see here, we have a number here. That means our first trade was a success. So we can now go over here into the goods menu, and there's a little pile of coins there. So we're going to buy ourselves some clay. You can always select if you wanted to have the cheapest or the closest. It takes a while for materials to be transported to your city. So in a nutshell, I personally prefer though to go and buy the cheapest because, it's just some waiting time. It's also worth mentioning that you can also sell your goods to like you can buy them here. So the export depot is my personal preferred way, but you can also just skip the export depot altogether and just sell it leather manually. It's up to you. I just want to show you the tools that you can use. Now, what's important now is that we are setting up a box for that clay, because like I mentioned in the last episode, whatever a building is made out of, your janitor will need it to keep the building in shape. So therefore, it is now our duty to keep a certain amount of clay available at all times in our stockpiles. Otherwise, we will be not able to keep up the building's shape. So let's build some roads around the warehouse, and then we're going to set our feet on the other side of the river. So we're going to build a road over here, but as you notice, there is a limit to what we can do. So what we now need is the remove water job. So here we go. Ironically enough, Songs of Six currently doesn't feature any real bridge building mechanics I know of, so this is the way. This is how we build bridges currently. I don't know any other way. If you do, let me know. So as you see here, we have now a pretty high amount of people that want to migrate into our town. That's because we're providing also a new service. The eatery is now ready. So with the eatery, it's also important that it has to sit in the vicinity of a food provider. Basically, if your eatery is too far away from a warehouse containing food, it won't be able to pull food anymore. And always keep this thing on auto-employ, just like I said. These service buildings, they really work darn well if they are configured on auto-employment, judging from my own experiences. So, now, the people are done with the nature bridge, and we're slapping up a road on top of that. Currently, I'm only using dirt roads because, they are just good enough. But later on, we're going to use other roads as well. Good. So, we made ourselves quite the progression, didn't we? So let's talk about the next mechanism of progress, and that's science. You know, every good old-fashioned civilization does some science. So science is conducted at laboratories. This is available for everybody, and it is a building requiring wood and furniture, or stone, depending on your personal setup. So at this point, it already pays off to have some sort of a idea how you want to structure your city. I already do. I personally have decided that up here we're going to set up the agriculture because the fertile soil is up here. We're also going to set up the wood industry, a little woodcutter over here, and the mining over here because we have the ore here and the coal over there. So there's going to be all the blacksmithing and heavy industrial work happening over here. That means this plains down here is going to be where the happy citizens will live at. And that also means that's where we're going to have the first installment of science. I don't know if we're going to pull our science somewhere else in the later stages of the city, but for starters, that's what we're going to do. Now then, that means we're going to require some extra roads again. I personally love to use roads as a ways and means to structurize my city a little bit before I even build anything. And keep in mind that with Control left click, you can pick up and copy pretty much every substance, building, whatever in the game. So if you want to build a road, just Control left click an existing road. If you want to build a janitor, you can just Control left click a janitor. And same goes for hearths and speakers and all these things. You can just do yourself a little bit of a favor, get things done more fluidly. At least that's what I think about. Now, let's get back to the lab. So the lab is one building that I personally like to build large because these will accompany us for a pretty long time. That's large enough in my taste, for my taste. So the thing about labs is they will get upgraded later. So all in all, we're going to use this building for quite some time. Okay, so we're going to set up the stability measures. There we go. Is that somewhat symmetric? Yup. Alright. So stations are, well, where you put the workers that rack up the knowledge. It is, by this time, it should be quite familiar for you. And if you want to be a real OG min-maxer, you see, you need to set up your building in dimensions that are really good for this format. It's just, I'm personally not, I don't know. I don't have much fun in over-optimizing my buildings. I'm okay with saying I have 64 workers in here. That's just what I need. And that's how we're going to build it. I'll leave it up to you. I mean, you clearly should be able to see by now how you could do it better than me. So, knock yourself out. Alright, at that point, we're picking up, again, more workers. And you see the food clock is ticking downwards and downwards. Even though, as we have the fishers employed, the pasture. The pasture is one thing, though, you need to note. Before this count of animals is full, the pasture is a pretty low producer of food. So if it happens to you that you have the problem that your hunter is no longer hunting well enough, it always pays off to put up a new one, like at the end of your current road, and we're just going to delete that place. So delete, boom, deleted that room, and now the structure itself remains. So you have to, where is it now? Dismantle structure, was that one? Yeah. You have to dismantle the structure afterwards. Otherwise, the building will remain and take up space. So relocating your hunters is way to go, in a nutshell. And also pay attention that the janitor's reach is is encompassing all your buildings completely. And I can already see the pasture is not going to get fully tended, taken care of, however you want to call it. So we're going to set up another janitor. Well, set him up over here. I can already foresee that at some point this area back here might become important. Super important that you have no holes in the janitor coverage. It's so sad that you can't see an entire grid by now. I really wish that would be a thing, but yeah, well. So, there we go. The lab will take a while. It's just a clear thing of not being supplied by enough furniture. So the hunters will now take up their job, and since we relocated them, they are now capable of reaching new areas they weren't before. But the reach of a hunter is all in all pretty long, as you can see here. It's, in a nutshell, time for us to expand our food production yet again. The Cretonians have a love for a certain kind of food. Is this the one? Yeah, here. So Cretonians love vegetables and fruit. So that's why we're going to whip up a farm now as the last thing that we're going to do for today. So, oh dear game, please. I'm not a big fan of sudden color coding changes. So we're going to set up the farm right there on the most fertile piece of soil, as you might have already foreseen. So we're going to start out with a fruit farm. Let's do this like that. And when you're going for farm plots, only try to go for as fertile as possible, basically. Because the payoff of the fields will be higher. So fertility 85%, that's just okay. I mean, I'm not overdoing it, as, again, I'm just not the kind of guy that likes to min-max stuff too much. It's just not my taste. I grow bored if I try too hard. So, now we got the issue that we need 199 fruit to kickstart the production. You could now either buy the fruit, or you zoom out until you find an area on your map where the stuff is growing for free. Here it goes. So harvest wild edibles is what you need, and that's the job that will harvest them as soon as they are available. So currently, of course, it's winter and there's not too much of that stuff available. The other method that you can go for is just to buy yourself the fruit. But as you see there, it ain't cheap at all, you know? It ain't cheap at all. We're not even able to get all the necessary basic materials just from the money that I currently have. So we're going to set up the next farm right away. I usually don't, but when your main species is the Cretonians, it really pays off to have a nice large farming area there. So we're going to get ourselves, yay, we got the lab done. So whenever you break a certain threshold of worker amount, the game gives you a boost in terms of experience. We're, of course, not willing to employ that many people here currently, thanks. It's going to be 10 for starters. So we're now producing research as well, and, well, that next farm, well, I don't think it's going to be that much of a big deal, so it's the same thing that we did before, just with vegetables. We're going to have to look for an area where we get these then. And Every one of these farms is roughly binding 30 workers at the end of the day. So these are really large scale projects, but it is going to provide our city with food that the majority of our citizenship likes. So that's totally worth it in its own regard. So let's go for the last thing before I tune out for today. Let's see, here's the wild vegetable that we're looking for. And yeah, so this will take a while until it's set up and running, but these things will bring us ahead. At the same time, we're now producing science. I'm going to talk about these things in the next episode. Until then, I thank you so much for watching. Drop me your comments down below. Leave me a thumbs up on the episode. I'd be really appreciating. And of course, consider subscribing. There's daily content coming up from my side. And if you like this one, chances are you like the rest as well. Alright, there's a playlist link to the entire Songs of Six tutorial series there, and I hope you tune in for the next episode when we're going to talk about tech and what comes after this first part of the game where we do all the expansionary stuff. See you there, and have a wonderful day.